Say it again.
Hello and welcome to Metro AVTechTips Redo. I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
And it's Wednesday, and once again, we had a problem.
Well, it just, there's, when you have a mouse that moves like 1 pixel away from the button for the macros, that switches all the mics and everything over, that's...
I'm sorry, did I just hear wah for your mistake?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Oh, yeah.
So it's Wednesday, Adam.
It is
Go
Wednesday.
through your spiel.
Okay, so everybody, thank you as always for joining us today. If you have any questions about whatever it is that we're talking about, please leave it over in the chat section over on the side. If you are on Facebook, let us know in the chat as well so that we know that we're actually reaching somebody over there. And if you're watching on YouTube as well, let us know that you're watching. Ask us any questions. If it has anything to do with today, fantastic. If it doesn't, if it has anything to do with anything AV related,
it doesn't just have to be AV.
or if you just want to make fun of Brent, go for it.
You wouldn't be the first.
If you are watching this after the fact, welcome to the episode. You can leave your comments down in the comment section down below. And that's available on both Facebook and YouTube. We're working on, I've actually reached out to the management team that actually handles our LinkedIn account. And I think we're going to try to be on LinkedIn as well. So that'll be kind of interesting. We'll see.
I don't understand that one either.
Sure.
We were just discussing my inability to grasp the obvious of TikTok.
Yeah.
And
then that's the whole other...
Yeah, the Twitter, the Instagram, the TikTok, the pick something.
Yep.
LinkedIn.
Well,
Facebook Messenger.
But LinkedIn makes a lot more sense for us because we get out there to other professionals.
I'm an old man. This technology just...
Yeah.
For those of you who don't remember, last week I told you I was going to be up in Jersey.
Yes.
In Ponkton, apparently.
Yep.
For the ultra short throw comparison. Not really a shootout. More of a here's what's available. 16 different models, 8 single lasers. Actually 9 single lasers, I think. And 8 triple lasers. It is on AVS form. I encourage you to take a look at it. It's amazing what they are doing with ultra short throws now.
Yep.
And screen material does make a difference.
Yep, yes it does.
But it's worth checking out. It was also an educational experience as far as HDMI.
Yeah.
From myself and others.
Yeah. Well, and we actually shared, you should also be able to find that on our Facebook and I believe also our Twitter and somewhere else in there, but we did share the video from that as well, so you can find it from one of ours.
It's a little iffy in the beginning because their internet, and we know about this.
Yep, we have learned our lesson from it, and unfortunately,
we're hardwired.
Now they have learned their lesson for it as well.
We're hardwired, yes.
Michael, I did get that stuff. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I was in the midst of some tech calls, so I wasn't able to read through it.
I didn't see my email till just before the show started.
And I started reading this just shortly before the show, and that's a lot of information. It's really good information, and honestly, I'm going to have to come back and read it. And that is the next question.
More importantly, can we post those links? Because what we saw, particularly about the 177,
right,
was awesome, and would love to share that information if we can. Yeah. Please let us know.
Let us know, and we'll go ahead and share that out in the description as soon as we get the okay from that. So, now, as always, everybody, thank you for joining us today. Like I said before, if you have any questions, please leave it over in the chat section over on the side or down in the comment section if you're watching after the fact. Come back next week also, and I'm really excited about next week.
What is next week, Adam?
So next week, we actually have, and I should have brought it out with me, we have one of our local dealers, used to work for us.
Used to work here. Redheaded?
Yes. So he has broken out, and he's now doing his own installation thing here locally in the Central Florida area.
The large driving metropolis of Daytona.
Sure, and he has he is working on building a new house that will act as their demo house. One of the partners in the company and whatnot has agreed to put basically all the cool things that go along with the systems into his house, and it's going to be created as a demo house. And we're really excited about it because he's opened it up for us to follow along in the process of creating an entire system from start to finish. We have blueprints that we're going to be working on next week live on air. He's already going to have a design, obviously, but we're going to talk about different things.
Do we get to do our own without knowing his?
That's not a bad idea.
It'd be interesting to see what you and I come up with.
Yeah.
Versus what they did.
Who comes up with what, and then we can do an on-air comparison of it. So next week, that one's gonna be really cool. I'm super excited about it. He's gonna be on air with us. Yeah, it'll be continuing on as we do the installation and as we do the different setups for it. So we'll have a whole special thing for it, when we do go live specifically for that. And hopefully at the end of it, we could possibly do like a large, reveal of all the cool things and walk through the house and do.
So just
do
like Home
other
and
stuff
Garden
with that.
TV.
Sure, yeah, we'll do something like that. But so come back next week also where we're going to talk about that stuff. And again, I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be a really cool thing. And to also, as we're going through it, maybe we can make some of the blueprints available so that we can get ideas from, you know, all the dealers out there watching. Yeah, exactly. So I got to get approval for that because this is someone's house, and so we just need to be aware of that.
Well, it's very intriguing because you and I disagree on many things. So
many things.
This would be intriguing.
So, okay, let's go ahead and get into today's episode.
And what is today's episode about, Adam?
Well, today's episode is about what are aspect ratios?
That's a horizontal and vertical measurement.
Yes, it is. So,
but how does that relate to us?
well, it has a lot to do with us, and actually, it has a lot to do with the AV world in general, and it's something that, honestly, we really need to understand, and I did not understand. And just in a little bit of research,
didn't ask me because I would have given you all the answers.
Well, there is that, but you were busy doing stuff that you assumably were busy doing. Assumably, is that a word? It is now. So what I've done, and you can do this as well, I've gone onto Wikipedia.
You're going to put the link on the...
Well, yeah, sure, we'll do that as well. But honestly, you can go on Wikipedia, and this is, the nice thing about Wikipedia is that it does a pretty good job of keeping track of all the cool things.
And fortunately, it cites its sources.
Yes. So feel free to go on there. Okay. Michael says it's not his stuff, so post at your own risk. Presumably public. Yep. Mark is a scan of a videography article from many years ago. Somewhere I may have the original. If you have the original, it'd be cool to get a new scan of it
because we're having a hard time reading the right edge of it.
There was a few parts of it that were missing on it. So, but we'll deal with that later. So, first and foremost, what is an aspect ratio? Let's start as some people, and before I was in the industry, before I was actually doing this, and I was just, Joe Blow, buying a TV and, hooking up my video game console to it and doing whatever else. Yeah, sure. I would see an aspect ratio, and I would not understand what it means, other than that TV looked different than that TV. And this was back when HD TVs or flat screen TVs were just becoming a thing to come out.
You're not that old.
No, but
I am.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing. So, when I first bought my first TV with my own money, it was just an old RCA.
Oh, so 6 years ago.
Yeah, sure. RCA CRT TV that was, I think the screen was maybe that big.
13-inch.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe a little bit bigger than that. But just
there was 13, 17, 19, 21,
sure.
24, 30, 32, 29s. There was all sorts of, because it was CRT.
Sure.
But the guns still just had it wasn't like we're dealing with now with fairly standardized panel sizes.
Right. So with that TV, that was the first one, but I didn't fully understand what it meant when it said it was a 4:3 aspect ratio. In fact, when I bought that TV, I didn't know definition. I just knew that it was a TV for under 150 bucks, and I needed one and wanted one because I had my first job mowing lawns and stuff, and I got a new PlayStation and I wanted to hook it up. And so
again, we're back to you're much younger than I am because there was no such thing as a PlayStation or even Pong.
Right. So I went out, bought it, put it up, hooked it up and everything, and it was great. Everything's fine. Fast forward a couple years, and mom and dad decide that it's time for them to go ahead and buy a new TV for the family. And they walk into, I think it was Best Buy, and they walk out with a, Oviedo, not Oviedo.
Ovidia.
Ovidia.
Yeah.
Yes. Olive, something like that. Yeah, it was a Best Buy brand.
They had a brand, they had a presence in the market for about 3 years.
And basically picked up that, brought it home, hooked it up, and that was cool because now I had the Xbox 360, which had an HDMI output on it. Now I was still hooking it up with the component connections and the RGB, for the RGB connections, but I was allowed to hook it up to the HD TV that they had picked up. So I got my HDMI cable that came with the Xbox, plugged it in, and there I got a picture, and it looked amazing because it was pretty good. Now, looking back on it, I realized that, okay, I had the CRT TV, which was probably a 480, right? Does that sound right?
480i.
480i. Then
actually
this other one,
than, but
yeah, what was it?
Olive or
Olive or whatever it is. We had that one, Turns out that one was probably a 720p TV.
There were some 480p ones as well.
Right. So we got that, hooked it up, and it was all great and everything. But the biggest difference between them was the shape of the screen, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to switch over here, hit the button correctly, to a top-down shot, and kind of get an idea for what we're talking about. Now, again, everybody that's watching this right now, honestly, probably fully understands what I'm saying.
Anybody older than him.
Yeah. But you used to have TVs that were more square, right? That's a pretty decent square. That's pretty close to a 4:3 aspect ratio. So you would have a 4:3 aspect ratio, looks something like that. And then you had the new HD TVs, which looked like a little bit like that. It was a little bit wider. Not by much, but enough to where it was a noticeable difference that you had it. And so you had a 16:9 ratio. So those were the two TVs, and for the most part, that's kind of what we dealt with, right? That's you know,
until you got into computer monitors.
The ideas.
Yes.
Correct. Now, yeah, in the computer monitors, you had like the, and actually some of those were 1024 by 768. Right? Or yeah, that's right. 1024 by 768,
4:3.
which is basically a 4:3. Yeah, exactly.
And then there's 16 by 10.
Which 16 by 10, and I'm not going to go into dates because I don't have that information. We're just slightly wider than a 16:9, but they have the same height thing. But here's the thing: what does it mean?
No, they were the same width. They were slightly taller.
No, wider.
Okay, what's the 16?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, you're right. You're right. See?
You and math.
See?
You and math.
Me and math, man. There, we'll do that. How about that? That's better. Okay, so 1610. So we're not going to get into too much with the computer resolutions because again, what do we work on? We work on CE stuff. So I know. Let's stay fairly. You have OCD or something, I think.
You're just now noticing
yeah,
that?
I'm just done. Yeah, anyways. Okay, so.
That hurts my feelings.
There it is. Thank you, Michael. Wait.
Was I wrong?
Yes, you were wrong.
What?
And it's wider but shorter. 1610 is wider but shorter. Here's what it is. Ready? Okay.
Wait a minute.
Hold on. Let's say, for instance, what is 4:3 and what is 16:9? All that this is a ratio. And what that ratio essentially means is that for every 4 pixels that we go to the side, we go down 3 pixels. And so with that, you create a shape, right? For 16:9, it's the same thing. For every 16 pixels, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, we're going to go down 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Wait. And if you go down 10, which is what I said, it's same width, slightly taller.
Sure.
That's what I said.
Okay. So, right. So with this here, now you get a slightly more pronounced, a slightly less of an inclined slope or declined slope. Basically, it's a little bit flatter, essentially.
No, a 16:9 is a little flatter than a 16:10.
What I'm saying is between the 4:3 and the 16:9.
Oh.
Yes. So what this creates is all that this is doing is it's changing the shape of the screen itself. We're not changing the resolution necessarily. You are, because you have to come up with extra pixels if you're going from 4:3 to 16:9.
Well,
but in some cases, you should. And in some cases, you may not be creating new pixels in those areas. You may just be changing the location of pixels in other areas. Because the resolution, here's the thing, technically, you could have like a 4K image on a 4:3 aspect ratio, or close to a 4K,
Sure.
for a 4K image. Because, again, 4:3 is not the number of pixels. It's not the resolution of that screen. It's the shape. That's all it is. It's just the shape of that screen. So you can have a 4K resolution for this one, or you can have a 4K resolution for the 16:9. And that's essentially what these are. It's just an aspect ratio is just the shape of that setup.
Width/height.
Yep, exactly. Now, there are lots of other types of resolutions. This is what we see primarily for displays today is the 16:9.
In the consumer electronics world.
Correct. That's what we primarily see today. However, that's not the only aspect ratios that are out there. And in fact, when you go and watch movies, especially if you go to the movie theater, they're not in 16:9. It's actually wider than the 16:9 ratio is.
And who determines that?
SMPTE?
No.
No?
No.
No?
That is determined entirely by the director/producer for their artistic vision.
Yes, correct.
So you can have a modern movie at a current movie theater with letter bars.
Yep. And in fact, they talked about this. Here it is. So there was actually one. It's a 19:16 ratio, or 1.19 to 1. That was actually done by most recently for The Lighthouse. That was the one with. It was kind of an artsy one with. Shoot, he just played the Batman.
Robert Pattinson?
Pattinson. Pattinson, and then the guy,
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, Robert Pattinson, and then the guy who played the Goblin, the Green Goblin. Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe. So it was the two of them. Dafoe. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson played in that one, and the Lighthouse. It was actually really cool. So apparently, you had a 19:16, which is kind of it's kind of a different ratio. It gives kind of a different thing, but all of that is because of what they were trying to create artistically, which is great, which is fantastic, because that means that you can actually have something that is different, right? That's one of the reasons that they do it.
Do you know why ultra wide screens exist for movie theaters?
No.
Because television was starting to kick their butt and people weren't going to the theaters.
Mm-hmm.
So the movies started going wider screen to provide a unique experience that they cannot get from their television.
Now that one did come from that article, right?
No, I've known that for years.
You've known that? Okay. Yeah. So that one is actually in that article that...
but that's where that came from. And then there's a wide variety of them. There's CinemaScope, VistaScope, all sorts of different names, Panoscope, and Sony Scope.
Right.
Not to be confused with Sony Superscope, which was a marketing brand before your time.
Yeah.
But the idea was that they could, and in a lot of cases, and you and I discussed this earlier, they took anamorphic lensing to shrink it down and then spread it back out.
Yeah. So which
is really cool.
That is really, really cool, because there's, with anamorphic lensing, yes. You would, I actually was watching another YouTube channel, Corridor Crew is actually really cool. A Corridor Digital, but they have a Corridor Crew where they do like behind the scenes stuff. They're a CGI company that just creates, CG stuff for different things. But they have like a behind the scenes, and they talk about stuff like this. They talk about like lenses and cameras and CGI and whatever else. And one of the things that they talked about was the anamorphic lenses that they use for the cameras, and the different types of lenses that they have. And I don't remember the other one. I'm not going to get into that right now, because again, that's something that's not entirely part of our scope of work. But essentially, you can have a film panel, or film. What's the word I'm looking for? Frame. Film frame. That would be like the what was it, the 35 millimeter? That could be like a 35 millimeter. But then what you would do is you would have a lens that actually captures a much wider angle, anamorphic angle. And when it then lenses that down onto that frame, what you wind up with is a fairly letterbox frame, or a 4:3 frame, or close to. It's actually,
because it takes the width and scrunches it down.
Right, it scrunches it down. So the cool thing about that, though, is that when you then take it and you use something like an anamorphic or Panomorph. No, that was a brand, wasn't it?
Panomorph is a brand.
Right. So, but then you would have a lens on the projector, which would then
spread it back out
again. And what's cool is that it actually takes like the specular highlights and stuff. So, for instance, if you had something like this cup, I don't know if you can see it or not. See how you've got the shiny parts off of this cup that reflect back to the camera? If you actually expand that and expose that differently, what you wind up seeing is that instead of seeing like a round image for it, which is what you would see with this lens that we have here, you actually wind up seeing a square or a rectangle.
Okay, well, I got a little history for you, because you started off with a 4:3 television.
Sure.
Back in the old days, probably black and white. Or did you start with color?
Color.
Oh,
yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
If you watched a Western, everybody looked tall and skinny.
Yeah.
Why is that?
They were doing the anamorphic lens.
Okay, so how did they resolve those issues?
So, issues of them looking
How
tall
did they
and
solve
skinny.
them looking tall and skinny? How did they
They
fix
would
that?
chop off edges of the video, wouldn't they?
Well, they did what was called pan and scan.
Okay.
So, if you have a, can you give me the overhead shot
yeah.
a second? Are we there?
Yep.
Okay, so we go back to the 16 by 9, or 235 to 1.
Sure.
So here's our movie.
Yep.
And what they would do is, let's say you're the lead character. It's an old Western. You've got Lee Van Cleef, or you've got Clint Eastwood or somebody in there.
Sure.
You look at them on TV, they're dead center
Yeah.
on the 4.3.
Yeah.
But on the 2.35, they're off to one side.
Oh. So you would instead of
Right.
it being right here, they would pan over to one side of it and capture that
Right.
for the 4.3.
Right. So what you lost was the vista.
Sure.
And this part of this works so well in Western movies because the idea was to capture the giant expanse of the West.
Okay.
So you would start with a shot, looking over this guy's shoulder as he's looking out
Sure.
at the great expanse of the West.
So you would have like all of the scenery and everything
Yes.
over off to the side, and he's, it's very dramatic where he's looking out over the
Right.
scenery, or you're looking past
So
him.
their options are essentially this. They either compress it,
Right.
I mean, you take all this down
Yep.
to that, or you just cut that right there.
Sure.
And that's all you see.
So, and let me do this here because I'm going to draw this out really quick, because this actually has an effect on how. Ooh. This has an effect on projectors. This is where we would see it primarily today, is on projectors, but also on HDTVs, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So let's take that idea. So you've got a what was the ratio?
235 to 1.
235 to 1.
Fairly common.
Sure.
But again, you had all sorts of different. It was up to the producer, the director.
Sure.
Which one they want to use.
So 235 to 1. And then what would happen, of course, let's put John Wayne here. Let's go a little. There. Okay. Got a little bit of a hat. Okay. Cool. So fix that there a little bit. So we got John Wayne in here, right? Now, one option that we have is we can actually compress all of this here down to let's use 4.3, right? Well, actually, no. It still applies to a 16:9.
Sure, it does.
So let's say we've got a 16:9 widescreen, right? So what we can do is we can take this information and we can compress it like this down to a 16:9. So if we take that down there like that and be like this, like that, we can compress it down to a 16:9. So we can see that, there's John Wayne's, hat and everything. So when we put it on there, everything stays relatively in the same spot on the screen. However, his head looks like this. He's a little bit taller, and his hat looks like a little bit smaller like that now, right? He's a little bit more squished.
Or the other option is, may I borrow your red a second? They will take the outer edges.
Yep. And they'll
And
chop
compress, not chop it, just compress those down. They leave the center unaffected.
Oh, so they would actually, so let's say you've got your right, like that.
Right.
So then you would wind up with something,
With a tall, skinny cactus.
a tall, skinny cactus, but John Wayne looks
Looking
correct.
reasonably correct.
Sure. And then the cactus looks something like this, where it's much smaller.
And
Look at that
thinner.
art. Look at that. You get a little bit,
Yeah.
working up pretty
and
good.
thinner.
Yeah.
So, and long before 16:9, this is how we watched movies.
Right.
So, the first time you watched a Clint Eastwood movie as a kid on TV,
Yeah.
it's like, why is he so skinny?
Yeah. So this is actually kind of cool too, because you can go the other direction as well, and you run into problems in that direction.
They'll blow it up this way to take out the letter bars. Women.
Well, the other one would be, well, the other way is what I'm talking about. It's like if you had, so let's say you had we can wipe it all down like at intermission if you want. I mean, that's, So if you start with a 4:3 aspect ratio, a very square. So let's say you're watching something like I Love Lucy or whatever else that was filmed, or actually in that case it was filmed, right?
4:3.
Filmed. Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, it was 3 cameras, but yes.
It was yeah. Anamorphic or bust. Yeah, pretty much. That's kind of where we're at with
Who's
that.
that?
That was Austin.
Ah.
So if you had a 4:3 ratio like this, so you got your little stick person here. What would happen then is if you wanted to go to a 16:9 or a wider image, what you would wind up with is a couple different options. You could have wound up with black bars,
which women hate,
on either side.
Because you're not using the whole TV.
Right.
My wife despised those.
Right. You could also wind up with where you're 69. This is getting wider and wider, but you get the idea here. But the person looks like this on the screen, right? So you get a stretch effect to it. Or what they would do is the opposite of all those. They would zoom and they would chop off the top and the bottom.
Which meant you lost the information leader on the bottom.
Right. So you may run into something like this, where you're missing out on the top of the person.
That was your typical cable box selections.
Yes.
Native.
Right.
Stretched.
Well,
or zoomed.
Native.
Right.
Stretch.
Zoom.
And then zoom.
Or you could just go to the HD channel for that carrier and solve the problem.
Yes. Which, if you all remember, well, actually in this area it was Bright House before Spectrum. But Spectrum did the same thing, where they had the SD channels and then the HD channels.
Before it was Bright House.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. But, oh, did I mix that?
Yeah.
But they had the HD channel, or the SD channels, and then the HD channels.
The HD channels were in the 800s typically, or thousands.
Right.
The HD channel, or the SD channels were the traditional number.
Right, and we had to go in and change. There was a setting in the box to say if you went to channel 13, it would automatically
go to 10,
right. It would actually go over to the other
yep.
one. So these are problems that we run into with aspect ratios. These are things that we see all the time out in the field. But yeah, we don't need mirrors anymore. That's right. So when
you legitimately don't remember the old days of early projection TVs when you had a box, you actually folded the mirror out because the screen was in the back side of the TV. The guns.
What?
Yeah. So what you had was guns, and you had a box.
Sure. Sure.
You had a box like this with a curved screen sitting on top of it.
Okay.
And then on the front, this would open up, and then the mirror would be here, and the guns would shoot from here, hit the mirror, bounce back to the screen in the old days.
And so you would actually have to control the mirror to change the...
No, there was no changing. It was 4x3.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, just the box would, instead of the mirror being out all the time,
right.
the mirror would fold back over and be the lid of the box.
Okay. Okay, because what I was reading was Michael was talking about using mirrors and arrangements in the film chain. And then now, of course, everything's done electronically and it just handles it digitally.
Yeah.
But that
was, by the way, with the ultra short throw, one of the things I learned that I did not know.
Right.
There's no keystone adjustment. The projector's either in the correct position
or it's not.
It's not.
Which makes sense because you're already so incredibly keystoned to begin with.
Oh yeah.
That in order for that to work correctly, you'd have to do that. Here, kick that my way.
I'll just.
Okay.
Not easy for an old man.
Yeah. So, how can we, okay. The traditional problem when it comes to aspect ratios that we see as an actual problem that needs fixed out in the field.
What problem do we see that needs fixed?
Well, we already talked about one, the cable box, right?
Okay.
So the cable box comes in and you've got the black bars on the side and they say, well, I don't want to see the black bars on the side.
The only way they're going to see black bars on the side anymore is if they're watching an old movie.
Sure.
Or a rebroadcast TV show from the...
Or they're going to see black bars on the top and the bottom, which means that you're watching something like a 235 or 241
and they still don't.
ratio.
I have a widescreen TV. Why do I have bars?
Right. And the truth is that because movies nowadays are still in extra wide. They're much wider, and most theatrical movies. I think I read a thing that said something like 80% of theatrically released movies are in the 2.4 or 2.35. And actually, Michael, I've been seeing something in a couple different websites when I was doing research for this, where it was a 2.35 or a 2.4. Which one is it? Is it 2.35 or 2.4? Tell me that. But anyways, what you would see, most of those TVs or most of those movie releases are in 2.35 or 2 or 2.4.
So you're still going to have black bars.
So you still have top bars on top and bottom. So for myself and probably you as well, if I'm watching it on a 16:9 television, I'm okay with the black bars.
Okay, that depends on my screen size. Honestly.
Okay.
Now, here's the deal.
Okay.
If I'm watching on this size screen, which is small.
Sure.
Boy, has our that
changed things, right?
I would probably zoom it out a little bit and lose a little bit of the size.
Sure.
If I'm watching it in the theater on a 110-inch screen,
right,
I don't care.
Okay.
But on a 65, yeah, I'm going to want.
You're going to fill the space for that?
Because,
okay.
Look, my eyes aren't that good.
Sure. So but for myself, I would rather see most of the content that the director wanted me to see from the beginning, right? The whole width of it. So I'm okay with the black bars. Now, some people are not okay with that.
How's your spouse about that?
Well, for her, she for the most part will do the zoom effect where we chop off the sides of the video.
And see, honestly, on the 65, that's what I would do. Probably, if I'm breaking 75 or 85,
sure,
probably not.
Sure, yeah. Keep the black bars on that. Now, we started talking about this at the beginning of the episode. Panamorph and yes, thank you. Panamorph and anamorphic lensing. So, Panamorph, the company. You know more about the history of Panamorph. Can you fill in a little bit on that?
In the early 2000s, as we started to get single lens projectors, not single lens projectors, we were low output, light. I mean, they weren't bright, and the cellular, the pixel structures were not as good as they are now. Until the Mustang 2 chip came out at 16 by 9. So, Panamorph made a lens that you could slide backwards. Panamorph.
Panamorph or Panavision?
Panamorph. Panavision is a major company that made film cameras.
Okay.
Our lenses for the cameras that did the anamorphic.
Okay.
Panamorph was a small company, I think, run out of a guy's garage, that basically made lenses that you could slide over the lens of your projector.
Yes.
That would spread it back out without losing light. That was the key issue, because projectors are so dim back then that there were still electronic options to stretch it, but you wind up not using all of the light capability because you had the black bars.
Almost a third of the light capability is gone.
Because now it's just a bar.
Right.
Top and bottom.
Right.
So it allowed you to take the content, play it in its natural state, and fill the screen up.
Right. Because it's taking that and it's stretching it. Well, stretching is the wrong term for it. It's refracting it back out to.
It's decompressing it.
Yeah. It's analog compression.
Oh yes, that's what it is. That's you don't remember
analog and
you don't remember DBX, which did the same thing in audio, compressed and then re-expanded it.
In an analog fashion? I didn't know that was possible. And that's all it is. You're essentially just analog compressing.
Right, but you're doing it with lenses.
Right. So
the shape of the lens is collecting the light and then putting it onto essentially square stock film.
Right.
And then when it's projected again, that square stock film is blowing it back out. And we're kind of back to what we talked about, when you've got watching that movie in a 4x3 TV.
Yep.
The reason the center looked correct is because there was very little effect from the lens there.
Yes.
The effect was to the outside edges.
Right. Interesting. So, and actually what I wanted to show was this here. I think it's this one. There we are. So this is actually the Panamorph thing that this is their website, which I'm sure that there's others, but this is actually really cool. And panamorph.com is the website for this one, but you can go on and find it yourself. But I will also have it linked down below. But essentially what's happening, make that
It just
go
went
away.
dark.
There we go. But essentially what's happening here is that you're taking the lens, which is already, the existing lens of the projector, and then we're converting it back out to the wider anamorphic size, the original.
Returning it to its original state.
Quote unquote original at that effect.
Right now, most of the manufacturers work with this company to minimize issues. In the early days, it was pretty much guesswork. Frames were built, and you had to hang it and slide it back and forth. And
yeah. Did I hit the right button there? Where are we at? There we are.
But you pretty much have to have a 235 screen to make this work.
Yeah. So with the which the idea of that's really freaking cool because and pardon me for this, but my mind was blown today as I was doing research for today's episode. When I found this and you told me to look this up and I looked it up. I'm realizing now that there was a lot of things that as an installer I didn't know. And this is one of those things that I wish I had known and should have known.
If you don't have the client that appreciates this, suggesting something like this unless you're a good salesman.
Sure.
And you were a CI, not the sales guy.
Correct.
And honestly, this comes down to the sales staff,
Yeah.
not the CI.
Yeah.
You need to find out, is this guy movie, is he a movie buff? If he's legitimately a movie buff,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
You sell him a 235 screen, or for a while in the mid-2000s, they were curved screens.
Sure. Yeah, with those, though, you wind up with a hotspot on some of them if it's not done
the
right.
idea of the curved screen is it actually, if you used the Anamorphic design for the curved screen, it actually created a more seamless picture.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Versus flat, because when you're trying to spread it out to the flat, you ran into some distortions on the outer edges.
Makes sense, yes.
With the curved screen, you're the exact same distance from the lens.
Right, no matter
all
where
the
you
way up.
are.
Right.
Gotcha, so you don't get any
Right.
weird fluttering or feathering
Now,
happening
obviously,
on the
Samsung
edges.
and LG got the wrong answer from that and tried to do curved TVs.
Sure, sure.
Which was the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Or wrong reason for the answer.
Right. So then when you have a setup like that, then what it creates is, look, you can have a 235 or size screen or shaped screen, so you get the
The ultra-wide
some people call it the ultra wide screen, but
Or
you get that
Vista
effect. Yeah. But when you have that setup with it, you are watching the best part about all of that is the fact that you're watching all of the resolution that is available for that movie.
Assuming that the movie offers that option.
Right.
Now,
Right.
most movies you purchase today are purchased in a 16:9 format.
Especially if you're watching it through a streaming service, which is actually kind of interesting because if you have, so say for instance, we've got the Apple TV, which we're connected to right now, but let's say we have you want to watch something like here's Life of Pi, right?
Does it offer a 235 option?
So Life of Pi,
on the disc, they'll generally offer a 16:9 or 235 if it's available.
1.85 to 1. Which a 1.85 to 1
It's right there.
is a 3720. So that one's actually even wider than that originally. But what this means though is that if you're at that point, you're compressing it even, or you're losing less of the picture to begin with. So you get some really cool things with that. But the point is that if you're able to watch it at its intended size, ooh, the experts, they have a 1080p Titan with an anamorphic lens that he'll sell you.
Okay, first off, that's a big projector.
Sounds like a big projector.
Yeah, yeah.
And
bright.
he has the curved screen as well. So there you go. So Austin says he'll pay $12 for it. I'm going to say $13 for it.
You know what? I'll pay $8 because it's going to be a
you have to go and get it.
Yeah. And what do you do with that curved screen when you're not watching that projector? Because see, everything has to be set. You don't just buy a curved screen. You have to have the correct lens and everything.
Exactly. You have to have everything correct for it.
Now,
So,
still, if you're watching primarily 16:9 and you get, all right, let's step back. You put a 235 screen in because you're a movie aficionado.
okay.
So what do you do when you're watching broadcast off streaming?
So that's what I was kind of curious about because one of the things that, and again, this is literally today. This is still brand new to me. That the Panamorph brand that's there. They have for the most part a fixed lens. They offer motorized lenses that move in and out of the way, so that you can still watch.
Okay, that's all well and good, but if you have a 235 system,
Sure.
and you get the lens moved out of the way,
Yep.
and you're watching 16:9 content,
You got black bars on the side.
you probably have nothing on the side
Do you have something above and
because
below?
unless the projector's generating it.
Oh no, because you're gonna have above and below at that point.
No,
It's actually gonna go beyond the
unless the
screen.
projector's automatically generating the black bars for you, because your source material doesn't know you have a 235 screen. So what you have is just light on the screen.
Now, is it actually doing that, or is it because the
That's
projectors
where masking
nowadays
comes in.
physical masking,
Physical
like to have
masking.
the curtains and stuff that come in?
things come down on the screen to
Sure.
hide it.
So now most newer projectors today, don't they automatically switch between the different resolution or different
No.
aspect ratios?
No. Okay, if you have a 4K 3840 by 2160 16:9 projector, unless it specifically offers a 235 option, it's not going to.
Okay,
So you put the Panamorph, you put a lens on there, something like that to give you the 235.
right.
and then you put a 16 by 9 on there. You have to move the Panamorph out of the way, or it's going to do weird things to the 16 by 9 because it wasn't recorded in Panamorph or Anamorphic.
Right.
So you're just going to have white because the pixels have no content.
Right.
That's where masking came in.
Right.
Now, masking originally started primarily for guys using 4:3 screens to watch 16 by 9.
And they would mask the
top and the bottom, so the white disappears.
Right.
And then when the big screens came out, they would do masking for 4:3 content. You know, so you had the mask that came down on the sides. And you can have multiple masking.
So one of the things that I did want to talk about also was just the sheer number of
recognized
previously and currently used aspect ratios that are recognized. And
I
think that's the best way to do it. There's 30 listed 30
that
listed resolution or aspect ratios that are recognized, and I'm sure that there's more, but 30 is still a lot.
Particularly when our world basically is
16:9.
16:9.
Right. So,
and you know, you still got some old stuff on streaming that's 4:3. But most of that now has black bars built into the content so that it fits into a 16 by 9.
So one of the things also is that's from there is what are ones that are used today, primarily today, and Wikipedia calls it a standard, calls it current video standards. It's not really a standard, I don't think so. But they have...
You're going to argue with Wikipedia?
Yes, I am a little bit.
They have... I'm going to step out of the blast zone for this one.
Vertical video, which is anybody who's taking out their cell phones and they're recording this way. How dare you?
And yet many do.
And TikTok has made that even bigger.
Yeah, I am, just for what it's worth.
Sure. They have also 1:1 or a square video, and that's a lot.
Which is also available in some of the camcorder and some of the cell phones.
Yeah, and in fact, actually 1:1 you see a lot with like Instagram or other social media platforms as well.
Basically a square.
Right. From there, the 4:3 is still a standard that's out there, still being used quite a bit. We have 16. 16:10.
Computers.
Right. 16 by 9.
Us.
1.85 to 1, which is the movies. Which actually, Michael, you made a point of saying that it's the standard theatrical aspect ratio these days. You're calling it a flat format. Can you define that a little bit more for me? And then 2:1, which is kind of an interesting one there, because 2:1 initially, and the only reason I'm bringing this one up is because the story behind it's kind of interesting. 1998, a cinematographer by the name of Vittorio Storaro, I butchered that, I'm sure, advocated for a format named Univisium.
Italian.
Sure. That used a 2:1 format. The idea of it was that it was a compromise between the 2:39 to 1 aspect ratio and the HDTV broadcast of 16:9. So it was like a medium, somewhere in between. Yeah. It gained a little bit of attraction in the theatrical film market, but recently it's being used by Netflix and Amazon. They're actually used it on House of Cards and Transparent, respectively, which is kind of cool. I mean, the whole idea behind having giving a director or an artist the option of different aspect ratios,
and we discussed the advantage of that earlier.
Yeah.
And what is the advantage of that?
Just you have different options out there that you can have cool ideas.
You can actually pan inside of the frame.
Oh, yes. Okay, so that's another thing. Because that's more of a resolution thing, though. Yes, you can pan inside the frame.
Look, if you're doing 2:1, you're taking it down to 16:9.
Sure. In most cases.
You can actually shoot wider than what you broadcast and determine what you're going to take of that shoot.
Got it.
Just like our video on some of the video cameras.
Gotcha. By flat, they mean not anamorphic. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Then that makes sense because you're basically shooting it with a standard lens.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah, which is like this camera here. This is a 16:9 camera. It's a 4K camera. You're seeing it in 1080p on your end because that's our streaming setup that we use. But it's still 16:9. But it's still a 16:9, and the lens for it's just a standard round lens.
And as best as I can tell, I still don't look thin.
No.
You know what I need?
You need an anamorphic lens.
I need one of those.
So it squeezes us and we look a little
bit.
When
I stand sideways.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah.
Let's do 235 with the anamorphic. Make me look better.
When they were developing the ATSC system, there were literally years of discussion over all of this, which makes sense because it seems like a fairly important thing to everybody follow the same idea.
It also came down to every manufacturer wanted their view to be the view.
Right. Right.
So a lot of this discussion was not simply from an artistic standpoint, but was from everybody wanted to be able to license their technology out.
Gotcha. Did anybody win? Do you know?
No, that was why there was 18 different formats when HDTV was released.
Makes sense. So, all this to say, how do we troubleshoot issues with aspect ratios?
I don't know.
Well, and that I kind of want to bring that back to the real world of how do we troubleshoot these things, because the troubleshooting of an aspect ratio is less of a something not working right and more of a setting not being set correctly.
Okay, well, let's step back a second, because it's
Sure.
not always aspect ratios. If you're troubleshooting, you need to understand your content.
Yes.
And now I say this from personal experience.
Yes.
I was working on a theater with an old Vidicron VPF 3-gun projector, and Kill Bill, the original Kill Bill was playing, which I had never seen the movie. And I'm working away, beautiful color, and there's a fight scene going on, and suddenly I look up, it's black and white. I have no idea what I have done.
Right.
Because obviously it's something, I mean, it just went black and white, and this is in the days of component. So,
Yeah.
what did I lose everything but the green connection? What's going on here?
Sure.
I spent not a small amount of time trying to determine what I had done wrong.
Sure.
When it was the content,
It was Kill Bill.
not me. So all I can say is know your content.
Yes. Know your content. Know your know the person that know your consumer. Know the client, because some clients don't want to see black bars. Period. No black bars. Don't want to see any. That's just
Nope.
how they are. Which, that's fine.
This just raises the cost of the system.
Just like we have artistic license for the director, we also have consumption license for the consumer. Because at the consumer level, if they just don't want to see black bars, they're paying all the money for it. Go ahead and set it up for them.
No, there are solutions around that, like the Lumagen, which will allow you to change settings and
Sure.
expand things out.
Sure.
And there's other versions of that.
Yeah.
But the cost to get rid of black bars
Yep.
goes up dramatically.
The Grand
Alliance, yeah. General Instruments, Sony, Quasar, Zenith, RCA, Mitsubishi, Hitachi, NEC. It was a that's something you should look up.
the Grand Alliance.
Yes.
I think I will. I think I'll have to. I'm going to write that down actually.
that was a political cesspool.
Which it sounds frightening. With as much problem as we have.
The initial concept was to pick a standard.
Sure.
And all they did was allow 18 standards because nobody was willing to back down and use somebody else's.
Sure. So.
Is that from Michael?
Yeah. So when we look at then.
No. The table of 18.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to go back. I always have to go back and read through Michael's stuff because there's so much there.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes, thank you.
You really do set us up for another week of study.
So one of the other problems that we run into, and again, problem isn't, and troubleshooting may not be the best way to put it, other than the fact that you get the phone call and the client says, it doesn't look right. Okay, well, what does it doesn't look right mean? Okay, does it look? Are there sparkles? Are there, is it green? Is it pink? Is it pink? What doesn't look right? His head looks squished. His head looks squished. What are you watching? I'm watching John Wayne and whatever else it is. Okay, you're probably watching it on the TCM channel, and their original is at the 4:3 aspect ratio, but they're stretching it for some reason. Instead of putting the black bars up, they're stretching it. Oh no, there was black bars, but I hit a zoom button or I hit a stretch button. Then his head's going to look that way. It's more of a aspect ratio is one of those problems that is less of a hardware and
it's not a
device
technical problem.
It's a person problem. It's a personal problem that you're having to deal with the client to find the solution that they want out of it, and or just an education of the client to inform them of what's happening. And for myself, that's one of those things where you educate them as you're talking to them or as you're there on the job site, and then let them choose. And that's usually what we come up with.
Basically, Anamorphic vision is the video version of RIAA curve. Turntables.
Oh,
phonographs.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that
yes, we did.
like 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, something like that. Yeah.
Effectively, it's the video version of that.
Right. Or they will pay for it. Yeah, exactly. What are they willing to pay for? Because you can inform them, you can teach them everything that has to do with it, but if they want it to be a certain way, it may not work with the current setup that they have, so they're going to have to spend extra money for it.
What happens if they don't want to spend extra money?
This is what you've got. That's the hard answer. That's the well, it's not really the hard problem, because at that point it's just that's where we are. There's not going to be a whole lot of options for you unless either you're okay with what's here or you're willing to put a little bit more time and money into it.
Mostly money.
Yeah. So all that to say, with aspect ratios, there are other areas that they could have problems with. Projectors. You may have an issue where you're
Projector
watching
just won't sync right.
and so you get it's all zoomed in and everything's set and ready to go, but then you go to watch a movie and it's spilling over the frame of the screen.
Which it should never do. At no point
Sure.
should your projector spill over the frame of the screen.
Right.
If you set it up, let's face it,
Yeah.
99.999% of the projectors we see are 16:9.
Yes.
There are still some other ones out there, but
Yes.
and you're going to run across a guy that buys a computer conference room projector because it's cheaper than the home theater projector.
Sure.
And then you have to deal with that 1610 maybe.
Yes.
So you may get,
There's even 4:3 projectors still
they're
that are
still,
being
yes,
used in classrooms
still,
and
yes,
other things.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
that you have to deal with, and those kind of customers traditionally
Yes.
do not go to custom integrators.
Tradition, and they're kind of on their own at that point.
As soon as you say that,
Yeah, of course, and that's usually the case. So again, with aspect ratios, the problem goes back to the fact that very little is it an actual problem with the device or a problem with the system. Rather, it's either a setting problem, with,
Or
which
users.
like the projectors, or it's a user problem where you have to educate.
so know your
yeah.
customer, know your content.
Exactly. Okay, so everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I think that's pretty
Michael,
much it.
thank you.
Yeah, and everybody who's in the chat, we really, really appreciate that.
Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, let us get some more subscribers.
Yep. Which I think we're up to a high number right now. I'll have to check it again later on. But
Don't forget, go to AVS Forum, check out last week's ultra short throw
yes,
comparison.
yes,
I did a very nice discussion on EDID and
Mm-hmm.
a few other things in it.
yep,
Video's a little, but
Sure.
I'm there, so it's wonderful.
eh,
And I'm modest.
sure. Of course, yeah. So modest, the most modest of them all.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So come
I
back
thought so.
also next week, where I'm really excited about next week because we're going to be talking with one of our local dealers here and going over a complete system design, installation, final, trim out, final,
Start from the
usage,
bottom and go
everything
up.
there. I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to go through that entire process. And honestly, for myself, I'm looking forward to learning through that process for myself because
Hopefully, let me tell you
there's a
what I
lot
hope
there.
you learn.
Yeah.
Don't cut your wires too short.
Turn off CEC.
No, I just don't want you to cut your wires
Don't
too short.
cut the wires too short. Okay. Everybody come back this Friday as well. We're at our hour mark then. Wake back up again. Come back this Friday where we're going to talk about one of our products on our Tech Tips Solutions episode. That'll be Friday at 3 p.m. I'm not entirely sure what product we're talking about yet, but we're going to get that figured out so you can get it up there for it. But come back Friday.
I mean, not that it really has anything to do with aspect ratios, but
We'll figure it out.
I think it's switch.
So come back this Friday for that episode. Come back next Wednesday where we're going to be talking about blueprinting and system design. And that's going to be really exciting. And not just system design, but
This one ought to be a good battle.
whole house system design. I'm really excited about that part of it. So come back then. You missed it. He talked about it a little bit earlier on. The experts are asking about how the projector shootout went.
Well, it wasn't really a shootout. It was more of a comparison.
Yep.
Honestly, and I'm going to step out, I thought the Hisense overall did the best job that I could live with.
Sure. Price-wise.
Price-wise and performance.
Okay.
The LG was slightly brighter. Some of the Chinese brands did some interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, something I could live with on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. Yeah.
The Hisense.
Yeah. So, cool.
And Dolby Vision is starting to hit these.
Yeah.
I believe we did a Dolby Vision demo on internal streaming off of the Hisense.
Got it. Michael, you have to email that over to us in the chat. It won't let you post URL or links to it. So go ahead and email that over to us as well. Which, if it's one of the ones in there, just let me know if it's one of the links that you've already sent to us. Okay, but I think that's going to be it, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Come back this Friday. Come back next Wednesday.
Come back every Wednesday and Friday.
That's right. And we'll be
Doing
here
something.
and we'll be with that. If you have questions about whatever it is that you're going through when on the job site or anything else, feel free to reach out to us. Our tech support number is right here, 386-492-8584. You can also reach out to us directly, 386-202-6132 and 386-202-6137.
There have been a little bit of phone issues today.
Yes.
So give it a shot.
Yep.
Brent.McCall at metroav.com and
Adam.Rogers at metroav.com, and ROG is the way you spell my last name. What was that?
I don't know.
That was
Something to
interesting.
spell.
Everybody, thank you again for joining us today. We'll see y'all next Friday and next Wednesday. And until then,
reboot early.
reboot often.
Don't cut your wires too short.
Turn off CEC.
Call tech support.
And make sure your HDBaseT is longer than 20 meters.
At least 66 feet.
Sure. Thanks,
Have
everybody.
a great day. Thank you.
We'll see y'all next time. Where's my button?
Who's got the button?
I got the button. Bye, everybody.
Where's our credits?